What are the potential ramifications for Democrats potentially becoming more pro-Palestine? According to a Gallup poll, between 2011 and 2014, 51% of millennial Democrats supported or sympathized with Israel, with 35% voicing sympathy for Palestine. However, between 2019 and 2023, 46% of millennial Democrats now sympathize with Palestine, and only 35% for Israel. President Joe Biden, along with other national Democrats, have voiced their support for Israel, but there have been numerous pro-Palestine marches and protests across colleges and heavily Muslim areas in the U.S. Representatives of the Squad Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib have been under fire by Republicans recently for their comments. X200B. Some questions. What could be the potential ramifications if Biden and the National Dems completely sided with either Palestine or Israel? If you were a Republican strategist, how would you try to exploit this divide? Why do Muslims predominantly vote Democrat? Given the track record in Muslim countries over female and LGBT rights, why would they vote Democrat? Could the Democrats risk having Jewish voters shift Republican? I'm not sure I understand the constant desire for people to pick a side. I support the Palestinian people and the Israeli people. I don't support Hamas or the Israeli government. Dems still have PTSD from the 2002 midterms, where they were successfully labeled as being soft on terrorism after 9/11. They got destroyed and humiliated that year. Kind of explains part of their strong vocal support for Israel against Hamas. Republicans would love nothing more than to run that playbook again. It could push some Jewish Democrats to the right. But also the current stance of the mainstream Democratic Party is actually alienating a lot of pro-Palestine people who are critical of American support of Israel. I don't think it'll push pro-Palestine people to the right, but could lead to them not voting. Considering the fact that your polls are horribly out of date, your questions are all built on faulty assumptions. Try again with more recent data. I think the Democrats carving out a far-left faction of the party is actually beneficial to them. The thing the GOP has going for it is insane looking reasonable by comparison to batshit insane. Biden, Harris, Whitmer, Warnock, Shapiro, Newsom, etc. basically just have to voice support for Israel to gain street cred with independents. It's been forever since the left actually had a farther left faction even making itself known. If the Democrats shifted to supporting Palestine, it would definitely lose them a large percentage of Jewish voters. Typically, voters don't like when their politicians support people that advocate for global mass murder against their ethnic group. Why would they? Unless people are blind. What Hamas did was so horrific, so disgusting. They aren't going to gain sympathy with those actions. I don't think most Americans know or care what is going on in the ME right now or ever. Your concern hive posting is duly noted by your history. Man IDK how half of my age group managed to get completely propagandized into supporting a group of barbarians that would chop off all our heads without a second thought because of our viewpoints. These Muslim extremists aren't our friends, people. Their goal is the extermination of all Jews and Christians. We can't let them keep using innocents as shields while taking pot shots at us whenever the opportunity presents itself. I think when people like David Duke are celebrating people like Ilhan Omar for their strong stand against Jews, we have a problem in American politics. We should stop funding Israel unconditionally. I feel like we raised a monster. I would love it if Democrats stood for human rights, no matter the people in question. Why do Muslims predominantly vote Democrat? Muslims don't like Christians. Christians typically vote R. The left is full of people who think Muslim just means a different flavor of someone against the Christian R and don't understand that there is far more to this. I remember a time when being pro-Palestine was the default. When people like Norman Finkelstein and Noam Chomsky and Christopher Hitchens were able to get through to people. Times have changed. Now everybody is racist. Class doesn't matter as much as race, and Democrats support apartheid. What a time warp. What are the ethical and moral and geostrategic implications for America if it supports Israeli ethnic cleansing and genocide of Gaza? If that happens, I see American Jews swinging hard to the right. Maybe not all, but certainly a sizable percentage. The subsequent generation is more diverse, less Christian, more atheist, more informed, and do not rely on CNN, Fox News as their primary source of news. They don't care about the Holocaust as much either. The squad may potentially be the new sentiment among future generations versus outliers. Eyes wide open. Due to Israel's blockade before the Hamas attack, 80 of Gazans lived in poverty. 95 did not have access to clean water and unemployment rate was 47. I can't speak for Democrats, but this liberal-leaning independent thinks the U.S. should support oppressed people everywhere in the world regardless of religion. This is the same America that supported oppressed Jews after World War II. This is hopefully the same kind of shift that led to the end of U.S. support for apartheid South Africa. I don't think most Dems are directly pro-Palestine, but limiting people to live in only a certain area of the country due to security reasons isn't working, and it's basically killing them slowly. So certain political terrorist groups lash out. The current political and governmental design in that region isn't working and it needs changed. People now have other sources of information instead of MSM, which has been on the decline for years. People are opening their eyes and seeing the truths of the matter. Zionists' oppression have been the source of all violence in the region. Biden? It will never happen. He is psychotically Zionist. It's going to cost him a ton of support amongst youth and Muslim voters. But it's all he knows. Israel's invasion of Gaza will be one of the most lopsided battles in history. Tanks, heavy artillery, aircraft, the full brunt of a modern military against people armed mostly with rocks. Israel does not need a special aid package from the United States to win this. The DNC and Democratic leadership aren't changing their stance, so it's mainly going to be limited to generational voter turnout, which will be sinking anyway unless Democrats decide to stop going with their corporate donors and start moving left. I don't see it making a big difference, but even small differences can sway elections. They're trying to covey that Israel, being the only democratic country in the Middle East, is the glue that hold all other democratic governments together. There is nothing democratic about the hardline Israel gov. Whoever supports Palestine at this point supports Hamas, whom are worse than ISIS and are Iran's proxy. I think people will come to realize that both the Hamas terrorist and the IDF are terrorists. Because that's the reality. They terrorize each other. I'm 62 and I have known this since I was 30. Pretty devastating. Democrats are about the only anti-Semitic political party out there. It would be a huge mistake to not side with both. The Palestinians are not the enemy. It's the terrorists Hamas acting under the color of religion who are the enemy of both the Palestinian people and the Israelis. Getting the Palestinians to rebuke Hamas will be extremely difficult, just as hard as it is for MAGA Republicans in this country to rebuke Trumpism.